What's up, guys? Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Sam, and we are really glad that you're able to join us online this evening. There are a couple things I want to let you know about today that are really important that you're going to want to hear. The first thing is in the description below, you're going to find a link. Click that link. If you're new here, fill it out. We would love to connect with you. In addition, if you want to get involved in community groups, whether in person or via Zoom, again, fill that out, and we would love to help connect you with people that don't just know you, but who care about you and love you deeply. And now, guys, look, there's one more thing that we're doing tonight that you're going to want to hear about. It's really special. We haven't ever done it before. We're giving away 20 free t-shirts, free Encounter merch to the first 20 people that tag us on Instagram at EncounterFWTX. If you do that, take a picture of the way you're worshiping, tag us, and you're the first 20 people, you will win a free shirt. To claim your prize, you'll need to show up to Encounter next week at 8 p.m. and we will give you your free Encounter merch. So don't forget to tag us. You're not going to want to miss it. The shirts are amazing. Guys, we're excited to have you with us. We hope that tonight is encouraging and convicting and challenging to you. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome. If this is your first time joining us, whether online at Encounter or your first experience with Encounter in general, man, let me just say we are so thankful and glad that you're able to join us today. If this is your first time joining us, you've caught us in the middle of a 3-week series that we're calling The Good Life. In the Bible, there are 3 books that make up the wisdom books, and they're all answering the same 2 questions. What type of world are we living in, and how do we live well in it? Last week, we talked about the book of Proverbs, and the book of Proverbs is all about wisdom, and that if you have wisdom and apply it to your life, then things will go well for you. Essentially, it's like the idea that you're paddling downstream with the current. The book of Proverbs also says that if you don't apply wisdom, you live foolishly. It's like you're paddling upstream against the current. Things won't go as well for you. Your life won't be as good. Now, we ran into a problem, though, at the end of our sermon last week. The problem is that sometimes the wise suffer and the foolish prosper. Sometimes you can do all the right things, but things still don't go well for you. Let me give you this kind of example. When I was in middle school, I was a tiny little kid. I was small, I was scrawny, I was late to hitting my growth spurt, so I was shorter than everybody else. My voice was a really high-pitched little squeak. And so naturally, I was a pretty easy fodder for bullies in middle school. Now, understand this too. I was also a really good kid. I did all the right things. I followed the teacher's rules. I was respectful to my parents. I studied hard. I was a good kid, but I was still bullied. There was this one time, it's actually kind of funny now. I know that bullying is not funny, but this is actually kind of funny now. In 6th grade, the teacher was gone. It was right after class, or right after lunch, and so we were waiting for her to show up, and I'm in the class, and I've got this kid in there, one of the bullies that bullied me in middle school. He was there, and he had backed me into this corner, and he had taken my arm and was hitting my face with my own hand. It's like, that's just like another level of being scrawny and weak there. But that's what happened. And eventually I got so tired of this happening that I lower my shoulder into the kid and I throw him onto these desks that are behind him. And like, instead of being like feeling victorious and excited about how I just stuck it to this guy, man, I felt really bad. Because the guy stopped picking on me, but I could hear him in the back of the class like sniffling as the class started, and I started to feel really bad. I'm starting to feel anxious. I'm starting to feel nervous. I'm like, oh no, what if I get in trouble for this? Like, I can't believe I hurt this kid. Well, I can't believe I did all these things wrong. I felt so bad that eventually I felt so bad that I ended up standing up in the class crying. Like, I'm bawling in the middle of class, standing up, interrupting the teacher. I walk up to the front and I confess to everything that I had done. Like, that's like social suicide in 6th grade. I didn't have much social status there, but at that point in time, I pretty much lost the rest of it, okay? It was incredibly embarrassing. And it was like one of those instances where I was the good kid. In this case, I was the victim. I had done everything right. I was respectful. I studied well. I was a good kid. But here I was the one that was suffering and the one that picked on me. After that, that brief class period, moved on with his life and never thought twice about it. But I'm the one left with dealing with it. It's exactly what we're talking about. Sometimes the wise suffer and the foolish prosper. Sometimes you can do all the things right, but things still don't go well for you. It's not hard to look in the world and see the same thing. When a dictator takes over the country and enslaves his people, he's not enslaving evil people. He's enslaving good people, people who live wisely, but they're suffering. When a bomb goes off in a market, The people that the bomb goes off on, that it hurts and even kills, they're not bad people. They're not evil people. They're doing well. They're living wisely, but they're still suffering. Another instance from my own life that some of you might be able to relate to. When I got to school, when I got to TCU, I was a pre-med major, and I was studying neuroscience. I wanted to be a doctor. And all through high school, I had gotten the good grades. I had worked hard. I had tried to be I was a captain of the soccer team. I tried to be a good person. I tried to be respectful and kind to my friends. I was doing all the right things, and I got into this school, and I rolled into this program. Then I got hit right in the face with freshman chemistry. And freshman chemistry was the bane of my existence. Man, I studied hard. I was diligent. I planned things out. I was disciplined. I did everything right. But I still was failing. I had these kids in the dorm. They were going out at all hours of the night. They were lazy. They weren't studying very hard. They would cram for a test in the last minute. They would skip class. And you know what? They got better grades than I did. I was there. I was working hard. I was suffering. I was doing all the right things. But I was left with a grade that was failing still. I had few friends, and things weren't going well for me. I was living according to wisdom, but I wasn't prospering. All the time I looked around, the ones that were doing the exact opposite, that weren't living wisely, were the ones that were surpassing me, the ones that were doing better. That's where this week's message comes in. And if we were to stop with this idea of wisdom, stop with this question of how to live well simply by looking at the book of Proverbs, we would be left thinking that the Bible was simplistic and it didn't work. We would be left feeling like we were given a bill of goods that was no good. But the book of Proverbs was never meant to be taken by itself. It was meant to be looked at in conjunction with these other two books. And when they all work together, they all reveal a comprehensive answer to this question of what type of world do we live in and how do we live well in it. Today we're going to be looking at the second piece of that puzzle. We're going to be looking at the book of Ecclesiastes. Like I've said, there are three wisdom books: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. And each of them answer the same two questions, but they all approach them from a slightly different and unique perspective. Last week, to help us kind of understand what perspective each of these books is bringing, the way that they're approaching those questions, we decided to look at each of those books as a person. When we said Job, we said he was like the weathered old man who had seen a lot of life. And we're going to hear a little bit more about him next week. Last week, we talked about Proverbs, and we said that Proverbs is like a young teacher. She's brilliant, but she's idealistic. And she's all about this idea of wisdom. It's the one word that she focuses on. And it's her key to living a good life. And that and she's optimistic that if you were to live with wisdom, then life will go well for you. This week, we're going to be looking at Ecclesiastes. And we say that he's like the sharp, middle-aged critic. He hears what Proverbs is saying, is like, you know what? You think wisdom will bring you a good life? Well, think again, because everything on earth, and he uses this one word, he says, everything on earth is hevel. What is hevel? Hevel is a Hebrew word. In case you didn't know, the Old Testament was first written in Hebrew, and the New Testament was first written in Greek. And the Bible, either you're holding on to, you're looking on your phone, or you're reading on the screen, is a translation from those first languages. And while our English translations are really, really good, they're really, really accurate, whenever you're translating from one language to another, there are just some words that don't translate well, or they lose their meaning that they were meant to have when you jump languages. So depending on your translation, there are a few ways the translators have tried to capture the meaning of this word. So in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 2, it's where the word first shows up. It says meaningless. Meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Every time he says the word meaningless, in the original Hebrew, it was the word hevel. And so some translators will translate it as meaningless. Others will translate it as vanity. But this Hebrew translation, the English translation of this Hebrew word, they aren't wrong, but they're missing something. There isn't one word that can easily capture the meaning of the word hevel. Hevel is used here more like a metaphor to say that life is like smoke. It's not saying that life has no meaning, but it's saying that its meaning is never clear. Life is like smoke in that life is confusing, it's disorienting, and it's uncontrollable. And when you're stuck in it, it's impossible to see clearly. It might seem solid, and it seems that if you can reach out and grab it with your hands, but when you do, it just kind of slips right through your fingers. So in Ecclesiastes, he's saying life is not black and white as it's made out to seem in the book of Proverbs. It's not as easy to understand. But in order to understand what the book of Ecclesiastes is saying, there are two things that you need to know about it. First, you need to understand that in the book of Ecclesiastes, you're hearing two different voices. The first voice and the last voice that you're going to hear from is the author. And he's the one who's collected all of the second voice's words. So there's another person talking. The second one that's talking is the teacher, and he's the main voice. And so the author starts out the book by introducing the teacher in chapter 1, verse 1. And then the teacher speaks pretty much for the whole rest of the book before the author concludes and kind of gets the final word and then adds some commentary at the end of chapter 12. But in between chapter 1, verse 1 and chapter 12, you're on this really long and honestly really depressing roller coaster. Here's what I mean. The goal of the two voices in Ecclesiastes is to help you live well, help you live the good life. And so the book of Ecclesiastes does this in a couple of ways. In the end, you're going to get 3 keys to living well. But first, the teacher tries to dismantle all the ways that people try to find meaning and generate purpose in their lives with things that ultimately will never give them the purpose that they're looking for. And he does it by noticing and returning to 3 really disturbing aspects about life in this world. Now look, let me just warn you, they really are depressing. And so before you tune them out, stick with it to the end, because if you do, there's some really profound wisdom about how to live well in this world. So here are the 3 really disturbing things about this world that the writer of Ecclesiastes brings up time and again. The first thing he says, the first disturbing trend that he notices is the never-ending march of time. Ecclesiastes 1:4 says, "Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever." Then he expands on that in the rest of chapter 1, and he concludes the idea in chapter 1, verse 11. It says, "No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. Time waits, and it slows down for no one." If you want a rhyme to help you remember it, generations come and generations go, but no one remembers the people from long ago. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? I'll say it again. Generations come and generations go, but no one remembers the people from long ago. Did you get that? No? Let me say it again. Generations come and generations go, but no one remembers people from long ago. There was bars. Look, that was super cringy. I get that, but I'm trying to explain this one idea to you guys. It doesn't matter how great you are while you're alive. The people that come after you won't care. Now it sounds cold-hearted, but let me explain. There's this actor in the 50s. His name's James Stewart. He's actually super famous from the 50s. And he actually starred in one of my all-time favorite movies, It's a Wonderful Life. And as much as I love that movie, and as good of an actor as he is, and as famous as he was back in the 50s, if you were to switch him out with some other person in the movie, I really wouldn't care that much. I remember his name and recognize his face, but I don't really care about the person that he was because he's in the past. It's not cold-hearted. It's just a principle that Ecclesiastes, the writer of Ecclesiastes, observed. Generations come and generations go, but no one remembers people from long ago. He's trying to get you to put your life in perspective. He's saying, look, you can strive and work to be as best as you can possibly be at something. You can make the most money you can possibly make. You can make the biggest contribution to this world. You can be a good person. You can love and you can serve people. You can be a celebrity. You can be the guy in your fraternity that goes harder than anyone else. You can be the smartest person in your friend group, the one that everybody praises is going to be the one that goes on to do great things. You can be a local legend on your campus. But the people that come after you won't care. The march of time never ends. This couples with his next observation, his second one. He says, we're all going to die. Look, I know it's depressing the first time. It's equally and more depressing the second time. He says, we're all going to die. You can spend your life chasing after pursuit after pursuit. You can live with stress and worry. You can hold on to bitterness. You can labor and toil. You may find success. You may not. You may be a good person. You may be evil. You may be generous. You may be selfish. It doesn't matter. You're all going to end up in the same spot. Jeff Bezos will end up in the ground with the homeless man. Mother Teresa will be in the grave just like Osama bin Laden. Bullies and victims, abused and abuser, they all end up in the same place. They all die, and there's not a single thing anyone can do to change it. Look, I know that's super depressing, but unfortunately, he's got a third thing. He also says that life is random. Ecclesiastes 9:11 says, I have seen something under the sun. The race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all. Look, this is the greatest break that the writer of Ecclesiastes has from the writer of the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is much more formulaic. It says, if you do this, then this will happen. It says that life is much more predictable. The writer of Ecclesiastes says life is not actually predictable under the sun. In fact, things happen that don't actually always make sense. Like you heard me mention earlier in this message, when I was in middle school getting bullied, I did all the good things, I did the right things, but for some reason I was the one that still suffered. Or when I got to school and I started taking that freshman chem class, I did the right things. I lived wisely, but I still failed. And the ones that lived foolishly, the ones that didn't live as wisely as I was living, they were the ones that succeeded. They were the ones that prospered. And the writer of Ecclesiastes would say, yep, that's the way things go. Life here on earth is random, and things end up being left up to chance sometimes. It's not as predictable as it might seem. What he's trying to do here, he's not trying to depress us or make us lose hope. What he's trying to do is have a conversation with us about the promises that this world gives so he can replace them with something better. He's freeing us from chasing after something that will let us down. It may sound harsh, but sometimes the harsh truth is better than having us continue to chase after something that we have no hope of getting. Let me give it to you like this. I don't like playing basketball. I'm not good at it, and I don't know what to do when I'm on a basketball court. One of my least favorite activities is showing up at the TCU Rec Center and playing pickup basketball. I hate doing that because I'm so bad at it. This is how it typically goes. This is how it almost always goes. Before the game starts, everyone's milling around, right? People are just shooting shots, trying to get warmed up, trying to practice. I never do that. I don't warm up. I don't shoot practice shots because I don't want everyone to realize how bad I am before the game actually starts. So I'm just kind of standing there milling around. So after a little bit of time, after people have shot for a while and they're just kind of getting ready to start, some dude walks up who almost always seems angry. And he just kind of starts to yell in this gruff voice. Honestly, he's kind of like a true alpha male that emerges from the pack of the rest of us betas on the court. And he barks, is like, hey, let's go. Like, okay, so the rest of us beta males shuffle over and wait for some stranger to judge us based on our physical stature or our clothing choices to determine whether or not we're athletically gifted. So we walk over waiting for this alpha male to judge us, whether or not we're good enough to be on his team or whether we should be on the other team. And so me being there under 6 foot with minimal muscle mass, always showing up in a ratty t-shirt and old tennis shoes, I'm usually picked bottom half, but that's probably where I belong. And every time I get picked, what externally I'm displaying is, yeah, okay, cool, like let's do this, I'm ready to go. But inwardly I'm like, sucker, you just made the worst decision you're gonna make all game because I suck. Just wait for this to happen to you. So we start the game, I'm running around, like I always say when I'm on offense, around the 3-point line. Because I'm not running into the middle because I have no hope of dribbling past anybody or bodying anybody up. So I try to stay on the 3-point line. Now keep in mind, I have no business shooting a 3-point shot, but that's where I'm at anyway. And so inevitably I get the ball past me right in the beginning. And what happens is like what happens when Michael Scott passes Stanley the ball in the first season of The Office. Stanley gets the ball and it's very evident from the very beginning that he starts dribbling. Stanley sucks at basketball. And Michael's like, are you kidding me? I can't believe I picked you for my team. That's what it's like. I take a few bad dribbles and I fire off a shot from way outside from where I've ever have business shooting a shot, inevitably miss. I look over, my alpha male team leader swears under his breath, and from that point on, I don't get the ball the rest of the game. I just run around in my 3-point line, having no clue what to do, but just taking up space on the court and being generally hated by everybody that passes me the ball. That's how basketball goes for me. But believe it or not, I actually used to love playing basketball. When I was in elementary and middle school, I used to really like it. And if I had said in those days, and if I come to my dad and said, Dad, hey, don't worry about that college fund. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get paid to go to school to play basketball. Then right from that is right to the NBA for me. What my dad should do in that moment is give me a bit of a reality check. Not be mean, but just say, look, son, there's nothing wrong with pursuing basketball. In fact, you should do it and you should love it and you should try to play at as high of a level as you possibly can. But I just need to have a little bit of a reality check with you here. you're not going to get over 6 foot and you're going to be moderately athletic. Unfortunately, your genetics are just going to limit you on that, and there's not really a whole lot that you can do. So try to enjoy the game and love it. But I think we should come up with a backup plan in case the NBA doesn't work out. The worst thing my dad could have done in that situation would, instead of giving me a reality check and make me feel bad for a moment, is to just encourage me in all of it and say, Sam, you can do whatever you want to do with your life. Just try hard and you'll make it. It might make me feel good in the moment, but eventually I would be disappointed and be in a worse off place because I was living thinking that the world was going to go different for me than it actually had any hope of ever going. And that's what the writer of Ecclesiastes here is trying to do. He's like, look, I'm trying to give you a reality check. I'm trying to help you understand that this is the way that the world is supposed to go. I know you're looking for meaning in your purpose in your life. Look, I get that. But look, even if even if you find out that you end up being the next Kanye West or the next Tom Brady or Shutter, the next Jake Paul, even if you get there, you're not going to find what you're looking for. You're not going to find it in $1 million. You're not going to find it in staking everything on your career or in the praise of other people. You're not going to find it in sex or in adventure. You're not going to find it there. All those things are fleeting. They don't last. And even if you were to grasp them for a moment, you would realize that it's not what you're looking for. So in the end, the author speaks up again. The teacher spoke for the most time. He gave us his wisdom, and the author comes back and gives us 3 keys to how to live well in the world that we live in. First thing he says is to fear the Lord. Ecclesiastes 12:13-14 says, Now all has been heard, and here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of mankind. If you remember last week, this was the drumbeat of the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs said over and over again that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. The beginning of living well is recognizing that God is God and you are not. He doesn't throw out the wisdom of the book of Proverbs. That's what's so interesting here. He's saying, but Proverbs is not all you need to live a good life, but it still matters. Think about it like code. I took a computer science class in high school and I was terrible at it. But I do know this. When you run a program, code is what determines how the program works. And if there's a problem in the code, then the program will have a glitch in it, where what is supposed to happen doesn't actually happen. The book of Proverbs is saying, look, this is the program. This is the way things are supposed to run. But the book of Ecclesiastes observes, look, there's a glitch in this program. There's a problem here. The code doesn't always work. The program doesn't always run the way it's supposed to run. The glitch in the code, the glitch in the program of the world is sin. It's the brokenness of humans and the brokenness of the world that has infected the code. And so the world should work like the book of Proverbs says. It should work that way all the time. The wise should always prosper and the foolish should always suffer. That's the way it should always work. But there are instances where the code interrupts that and causes it not to be true. And so the author of Ecclesiastes is saying that it's still wise to live according to the wisdom of Proverbs and fear the Lord. It's still a good thing because a lot of times it works out that way. A lot of times the wise do live better lives and the foolish live lesser lives, but it doesn't always turn out that way. That's what he's trying to communicate. It's still better. Generally, it's good. Generally, your life will turn out better if you live according to the wisdom of the Lord. The second thing we're told to do is to enjoy the moment. I know it sounds like the long dead advice of YOLO, but it's not. There's actually something that the writer of the book of Ecclesiastes returns to time and again. He says it in Ecclesiastes 5:16-17. As everyone comes, so they depart. What do they gain, since they toil for the wind? All their days they eat in darkness with great frustration and affliction and anger. It's really depressing, right? But then he goes on in verse 18, and he says, This is what I have observed to be true, that is it appropriate for a person to eat, to drink, and to find satisfaction in their toilsome labor under the sun, during all the days of life that God has given them, for this is their lot. His advice is to pause and enjoy the moments that you have. Linger over good food with friends. Enjoy your walk to class. Don't rush past the time you get with your family. Enjoy the rain falling outside your window. Go have a meal with your friends. Acknowledge that the food tastes good and that the people around you love you and care about you and that you love and care about them. And recognize that you have no control over any of it. Slow down and enjoy the beauty of the moment. He isn't arguing for us to become hedonists that simply try to gain just as much pleasure as we possibly can, but he is saying that there's a release that comes when we recognize we're not in control. A few weeks ago, my wife and I went to Six Flags, and we haven't ridden roller coasters in years. And I used to think I loved roller coasters until we went on like this really tall swing set. It's like this tower with these swings, and you sit on it and it spins you up as it takes you up in the air. I was like terrified in that, and I was like, this is not a good news for roller coasters because this isn't even a roller coaster, but I realized I'm kind of afraid of heights. We realized we're already at Six Flags. We got to push through. We got to ride some roller coasters. And as we were on these roller coasters, I very quickly realized that a roller coaster is way more enjoyable when you stop worrying about what's ahead on the next bend, or when you stop trying to stop the coaster car from going downhill. When you stop trying to control things that you can't control and simply just enjoy the moment and the fun that you're having with the person next to you, life got a lot more enjoyable and those roller coasters got a whole lot more fun. That's essentially what the writer of Hebrews, or writer of Ecclesiastes, is trying to say here. He's saying, look, there's a lot of things you can't control in life, and you can spend all your time worrying about what the future is going to hold, trying to craft it and shape it into what you want it to be, but in the end, you can't control it. All you can do is simply live in the moments that you've been given. He's also not arguing for us to not care, though, about anything. He's not arguing that, hey, look, you can't control the future, so don't even try. There's a tension that's happening here. There's a little bit of a give and take that he's trying to get us to see. He's saying spend some time thinking things through. Spend some time making good plans, preparing yourself for the future, thinking about what you want to do with your life. That's a good thing. That's a wise thing to do. But just hold it in tension, because if you always dwell on how good the past was or dream about what the future will hold, you're going to realize that you've lived through your life and you haven't actually lived at all. You've always been thinking about the past or dreaming forward to the future. Ecclesiastes says, enjoy the moment. The third key that Ecclesiastes has to living well in this world is to seek a God that is greater than the hevel. Seek a God that's greater than the disorder, the chaos, the confusion, the suffering, and even the joy in this world. Seek a God that's greater than that. In this strange way, Ecclesiastes is pointing forward to the coming of Jesus. Let me explain it to you in this last kind of story illustration. When I was growing up, there's this neighbor kid that realized that if he had a magnifying glass, he could learn how to burn ants. I know it's weird. It's kind of a weird serial killer type thing to do, but he was into it, okay? And he actually grew up to be pretty normal. But he was into it when we were younger. He could burn ants with this magnifying glass. Now, let's just say I loved ants, and I desperately wanted to let these ants know about the death and destruction that was about to be rained on them by this 12-year-old kid with a magnifying glass. It would be impossible for me to stand over them and warn them by saying, hear ye, ants, there is death and destruction coming. Come with me to the other side of the street where this kid is not, because his mom won't let him cross the street. They wouldn't ever get that message. They wouldn't hear it because I'm not speaking in their language. I'm just speaking it over them. They couldn't understand what I was trying to communicate. At the same time, it would do me no good to be an ant and communicate with them on their level, because I would lack the perspective of one who actually knew what was coming. I could only see what the ants saw. In order to actually be effective, I would have to at the same time be big enough to have the right perspective, but also grow up like an ant to speak the language, to be able to communicate with them. Then at the right time, I could tell them, look, guys, there's something coming. This world, the world that you're living in, you may love the little crumbs that you find on the ground. You may love the homes that you're building, but there is something bigger that's coming. You may not see it. You may not fully understand it, but trust me. Follow me to the other side of the street, because that kid can't go there. His mom's not going to let him cross the street. Come with me over there. That's kind of like the coming of Jesus. And that's essentially the idea that the writer of Ecclesiastes is trying to say. He's trying to communicate that the things of this life, they will lose their shine. They won't give you what you're looking for. And that's the same message that Jesus was trying to communicate to us. He was a God that was big enough to have the perspective to see everything, but he didn't just stay big. He got small on our level to speak our language, to communicate with us so that he could tell us and warn us, look, the things of this life, they may look shiny, they may look good, they may bring you pleasure, but they're like hevel, they're like smoke. They don't have what you're looking for. Find a different way. Follow me. and I will show you the path of true life. Find a God, follow a God that is greater than the hevel. It's the third key of what the writer of Ecclesiastes is encouraging us to do. So guys, as you've heard, in Proverbs, God is just and fair. The righteous are rewarded, the wicked are punished. Then we get to the writer of Ecclesiastes, and he observes that people don't always get what they deserve. The world isn't always fair. Things don't always work out the way that they should. The just don't always prosper, and the wicked don't always suffer. Life is unpredictable and it's hard to comprehend. It's like smoke. And this makes you wonder, well, is God wise and just? Is he actually good? Is he actually caring? Is he actually involved? What is he actually doing in this world of chaos? Join us next week where we explore the final book of wisdom, Job. We answer that very question. Is God actually wise and is he actually just in the midst of this world where things don't turn out the way that they should? Excited to see you guys next week.